All right, it's Tanya Summary Shiur time. Week 29, Kanai, and we're doing the second part of Tanya. We're doing chapter 3, or chapters 3 through 5. Without any further ado, let's get right into it. So, before we were discussing the concept about how Hashem is constantly recreating the world something from nothing. With his speech, he's constantly speaking the world into existence, and how that plays out. So the Alter Rebbe says that after we've discussed that concept, now anybody that thinks about it is able to appreciate how literally nothing the world is compared to whatever Hashem is saying at that moment, or whatever Hashem is saying to create that moment. Because Hashem is literally creating the person that's thinking and the entire universe around them by speaking them into existence constantly. Obviously, they're nothing compared to this speech. So the Alter Rebbe says that we can compare this to the sun, that it has light, and the light goes out of the sun. And yeah, the light is really powerful. Really, all of the life on Earth survives from the light of the sun. Most of the life on Earth. But the rays of the sun hit the Earth, and that keeps temperature on the Earth that isn't freezing. And it causes, or enables plants to photosynthesize the energy from the sun, and the animals eat the plants, and people eat the plants and the animals. And Shalom Al Yisrael, and everyone is eating because of the sun. If not for the sun, life would cease to exist. But all of that energy that's expelled through the light is like nothing compared to what's going on inside of the sun itself. The sun itself has so much more energy than just the light that it gives off. And in a certain way, you would like to imagine that the light shines into the sun itself, but whatever energy would bounce into the sun from the light that it itself is giving off, or whatever light would be dispelled into the sun, would be absolutely nothing compared to the sheer amount of energy that is within the sun itself. Now, there is actually a scale of this, even though that scale is way too large to comprehend how much energy is expelled from the sun versus how much potential energy is within the sun itself. But ultimately, it gives at least a certain feeling of, wow, that's like a really, there's no comparison. And in a similar way, that Hashem is speaking the world into existence, that speaking the world into existence is what causes everything. But it's nothing compared to the essence of Hashem. We're being spoken into existence by Hashem. We can't compare our existence to Hashem's existence. So the Alter Rebbe points out then that there is a difference, however, between the sun and the light of the sun versus Hashem and us. Because with the sun and the light of the sun, there's the sun, and there's a place that exists that isn't the sun. The canvas that the sun paints its light on is the entire universe around it, which exists independently of the sun. But with Hashem, there is no such universe. There's nothing else besides for Hashem. Hashem has no place to shine that isn't himself. So the thing is that a person might then get caught up in the idea and say, if there's no place for Hashem to shine, if not for himself, then how do we exist? Where can our existence possibly fit in? That we say that Hashem's creating us constantly with his speech in a way that's at least somewhat comparable to the light and the sun. But Hashem is speaking us into existence. Somehow we're supposed to fit in the absolute lack of absence. There's not even a universe to say that there's a lack of absence in the universe. So where do we fit in? So the Alter Rebbe says, in order to understand this, how can we fit in? To say that there is some kind of lack of scale of comparison between our existence and Hashem's, that in itself is a very refined level. It's a little bit hard to wrap your mind around. But the Alter Rebbe says, in order to understand a little bit of this concept, and also why we can't understand it properly, first we need to give an explanation, and that concludes chapter 3. It's not the conclusion of a chapter, but it should be the worst question that we're left wondering, that we're left pondering at the end of a chapter if we don't go into the next one. How is it possible for us to exist? But anyhow, chapter 4 starts off with, it says in the Pasuk, Shemesh Umagi Navaya Elikim, that the names of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which I'll henceforth be referring to as Havaya, and Elikim, they're comparable to a sun and a shield. So to explain this, imagine if the sun were just sitting on the surface of Earth. Faster than we'd all be able to say, wow, that's probably a very instantaneous way to die. The entire Earth would probably be sucked into the sun, burnt to not even a crisp, and become absolute nothingness. Now, there's a lot of distance between us and the sun, and there's an ozone layer, and there's so many different things in between us, so many different layers of the sun itself. We're not sitting in the core of the sun. If we would be sitting in the core of the sun, that would be very detrimental to life on Earth. Now, we profess that the sun is actually good for Earth. we say that the sun gives life to the whole earth. It's what causes life to be sustainable over here, photosynthesize, and the animals eat the plants, etc., etc. So if that's the case, a foolish person might ask, why can't we just have the sun closer to earth? Wouldn't that be better? As the Yiddish saying goes, good is good is better, nicht besser. If good is better, not better. So why not have the sun closer? The thing is that the sun itself is much too powerful for the earth. You need to have an intermediary, not an intermediary. You need to have something covering the sun so that we should be able to handle the sun in a proper way. Because otherwise, there just won't be an us to handle the sun. So in a similar way, Hashem relates to the world in two ways. He relates to the world as a way of Shem Havaya, which is the concept of Hashem's greatness and how Hashem sustains everything. And Hashem creates everything in the world, something from nothing, every moment. And this is Shem Havaya. But there's a concealment over Shem Havaya. There's something that covers over the essence of the godliness that is inherent within everything, that Hashem is constantly speaking the world into creation, and these utterances that He's uttering to create the world is an expression of Himself. If we would be able to appreciate that properly, we'd cease to exist. It's too much for us. But Hashem conceals that. He conceals Himself in the world, and the means to which He does that is that He relates to the world also in a way of Shem Elikim. So the Alter Rebbe says that in the same way that we can't comprehend the greatness, the vastness of Hashem, in a similar way, it's the same Hashem that's concealing Himself, the same Hashem that's giving out vitality. So we can't comprehend the concealment of Hashem, because it's really, really deeply, it's one and the same, but two different expressions. But ultimately, the same Hashem that we can't comprehend is His vastness, the same Hashem that we can't comprehend the concealment. The Alter Rebbe says, lest you get caught up in the idea that maybe there's something else that Hashem created to conceal of Himself, which would be what we call colloquially kfira, heresy. I'm not sure what the right word is. To say that there's something besides for Hashem. Hashem didn't create any partner in creation. It's all Hashem. Hashem is playing both roles. But the Alter Rebbe explains, and there's a classic example which the Alter Rebbe doesn't say himself, but I feel like it's fitting to bring over here to be able to explain the concept that there's an existence in this world called light. We've been comparing Hashem's vitality to light a lot so far, so it's fitting to continue with the example. Light has many different hues, many different colors. Now, white light contains within itself all of the colors in the visible spectrum. When we look at light, we don't necessarily appreciate everything that's in the light. But when you shine light through a filter, essentially if you would shine it through a green piece of glass, for example, then the light that would come out would be green. Now, it wouldn't mean that the original light doesn't contain green. And then you took it and you transformed it into green. What you did was you filtered out some light. Now, another point to make is that the essence of light, whether it's green or red or white, it's all the same essence. What light is, a wave. Not to get into the wave the wave particle thing, but whether it's a wave or a particle, doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. Light is the same thing, just different intervals of the frequency. But it's all light. So regardless of how much you filter it, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be the same essence. It just depends on how much the light is making it through the filter so that we can appreciate the light at the other end. So, and really the light stays the same, and it's the same essence of light regardless of where you're holding with it. So the Alter Rebbe says, firstly, that when we appreciate Hashem down here in the world, in whatever way that we do normally on a normal day, that's just appreciating our existence. When we appreciate that, really, it's a very toned down appreciation of everything that Hashem is, but it's still the same thing that we're appreciating. It's not that there's something new that was created with Hashem, or something that Hashem created to transform Himself. Nothing like that. It's the same Hashem. It's just a very limited, an extremely limited appreciation of Hashem, to the point that He carved a niche for our existence that we can actually appreciate, even though, as far as He's concerned, it's really all just Hashem, and that's, as far as reality is concerned, we just can't appreciate reality to the fullest, which is a good thing for us. The second point is that this level of concealment itself comes from the same place, the same Hashem that wants to create the world, and that He does create the world. He creates the world every moment, and He started creating the world 5,784 years ago, and He's been doing it quite consistently until this day. The entire process of the revelation of Hashem, the fact that there's a concept of appreciating Hashem, and that is too much. But at the same time, the concealment of that, both things, the revelation and the concealment, are really, if you would, two sides of the same coin. They have the same root by Hashem. They're both the concept of Hashem wants to create the world. They're just two different expressions in that. There's the expression of giving, and there's the expression of withholding. But both of them are two sides of the same coin. So it's a little bit deep, but that's the essence of what the Alter Rebbe is saying at the end of chapter 4. And that concludes chapter 4. Chapter 5, the Alter Rebbe continues this theme just to elaborate on it a little bit. So he says this is what it means when the Chachamim say that when it arose in Hashem's thought to create the world, he wanted to create it with the attribute of judgment. And when he saw that the world wouldn't be able to handle it, he partnered it with the attribute of mercy. This is to say that when Hashem originally created the world, part of the original intent was that there should be a constriction, that's true, but ultimately that the constriction and the mercy, they go hand in hand, they're partners. And it's not that one of them is higher than the other, one of them is greater than the other, or one of them is lower than the other. They're both ultimately working together. And it was part of the original intention that they should both be working together. Not that there should be so much light and then, it's too much to handle, okay, so we'll tone it back a little bit. No, they're both two sides of the same coin, that they were both part of the original intention for creation. That the original intention was that there should be a withholding, and that the withholding will work together with a mercy, with a giving. The Alter Rebbe says this point at which the concept of withholding and supplying, the concept of justice and mercy working together, is the highest point of our actual creation, of our actual existence. And it's so high that even Moshe Rabbeinu himself couldn't properly appreciate this level. And even though Moshe Rabbeinu was able to appreciate the world of Atzilos, another thing that makes me think about giving shiurim about the four worlds, but Moshe Rabbeinu was able to appreciate the highest point of our existence. Besides for this, he was able to appreciate them one step below, but he wasn't able to appreciate the essence of Hashem merging these two concepts of withholding and supplying at the same time, being part of the same goal, not working distinctly but together, but actually being one and the same in their source. The Alter Rebbe says another point, and this is the last point of chapter 5, but that in Gan Eden, which is a step lower in the world of Bria, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to appreciate more than a regular soul appreciates even in Gan Eden. But in Gan Eden, the concept of Gan Eden is to enjoy, to appreciate Hashem. And the way that we do that is through learning Torah. The source that comes from Torah that is learned in the world, which we discussed at length in the first part of Tanya, about how that causes an elevation in all the worlds, and it causes a revelation of godliness, etc. So we reap the fruits of that in Gan Eden, that through Torah learning we're able to appreciate Hashem in a very internalized way. The Alter Rebbe compares it to food, that when a person eats food, they're sustained the same way the Torah that a person learned during their lifetime, or that a person supported during their lifetime, is appreciated and internalized, becomes one with the person in Gan Eden. That being said, mitzvahs are loftier still. Mitzvahs are a full expression of Hashem, not just an appreciation of Hashem, not just an understanding and intellectual grasp of Hashem, but it's a full. I don't even have the right word for it with Hashem. It's you're acting almost like you're a vehicle for Hashem when a person does a mitzvah. So mitzvahs are so lofty that even in Gan Eden, in this world of Bria, it's too lofty to be able to be internalized, but it exists there in an external way, and Kabbalistically it's compared to clothing that doesn't become one with a person, but a person is able to wear them and show them off in a certain sense. So that concludes chapter 5. In Ritz Hashem, next week we're going to continue to chapter 6 and elaborate more on the concealment that makes up this world, the name of Elikim that Hashem uses to conceal himself in this world, and many more exciting topics. Looking forward to Ritz Hashem.